Welcome to Money on Tap. Money on Tap, your personal finance headquarters, where we bring out the professionals' experience and some fun in what we call three-dimensional investing, utilizing insurance, brokerage, and fee-based planning. That's what we do on this show. We look at all sides of the issues, and we bring a fully independent planning perspective to the table. Welcome back. You're listening to Money on Tap. My name is Seth Krussman.
And I'm Ben Brayshaw.
We are so blessed to have you here with us today. And we are just counting on all 10 fingers and toes, all of our blessings today that we count as being here in the U.S. with you today.
Seth, I would just tell you that you don't have 10 fingers. You have 8 fingers and 2 thumbs. But you can count all of them.
I hope I was in that math. I was going for 20 total, and I think I wound up kind of giving the image that I just have like 10 total fingers and toes. Grateful that that's not the case.
Good.
In all seriousness, because we're super serious about what we're going to talk about here today, we're going to be talking about some personal finance. We're going to be getting into Social Security.
I like the lightness on the beginning of the show, Seth, and then you're like, hey, we're going to talk about Social Security because this topic's going to be tough.
Well, you made me even more happy all of a sudden. I felt like I could just dive right in because I realized, I've got 8 fingers and 8 toes, and so we're going to be good to go.
Buddy, we've got a mountain to climb in Social Security. We're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the fears that people have about Social Security. We're going to talk a little bit about what maybe the future looks like with Social Security. So this is an interesting topic, something we've been chatting about on and off. It's actually something, Seth, that you and I we talked a little bit about in brevity a number of shows ago, and we said, we want to dive a little deeper on this, and I'm glad we're doing this because a lot of our listeners, there's a lot of people out there that are like, I don't think I'm going to collect on Social Security, or it's not going to be there when I retire, or what's going to happen? And then this person says it's all going to be fine and it'll just work out. I don't know. There's a lot out there, and I'm excited to talk about that later today.
That makes one of us, because it's a conversation that must be had and is good to have. Yeah. And if you want to have that conversation with us, you can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. Now, was there anything else we wanted to squeeze into this time before we dive in or dip in?
No, I'm good. Let's go.
Are we going to get ankle deep, or are we just going to go?
Let's make it happen.
You got it. Hey, it's time for Money in the News. If you didn't catch this little ditty here from the Wall Street Journal, got to give a little bit of credit, a lot of credit, because we've got Yoon Young Jung and Paul Hannon. You always stick me with the names. Telling us that global manufacturing shows fresh signs of recovery.
This is a solid article. This is kind of the article that makes you feel good after you read it. This is one of those articles that says, man, I'm all in. I'm all in. They basically are going through the entire concept of what global manufacturing looks like and kind of some of the index manufacturing. For instance, they talk about the U.S. Purchasing Managers Index, which is an index on the manufacturing purchases going on. And they talk about June being at 49.8, which is up significantly from the 39.8 in May. Now, it's interesting because we're watching, and we're going to talk a little bit about jobs and what's going on with jobs in America. But then they go on to say June was at 52.6, up from that. And then they're talking about a different index, forgive me here. But the Institute in Supply Management basically said it was from 52.6 to from 43.1 in May. This is the strongest monthly gain since records began back in 1948 in January by the ISM. So this is really interesting when you really think about just the magnitude of the swings we're having. I mean, when we talked about the jobs report in May and the 2.5 million jobs that were added, and we're going to get a little more into that. But when you think about these massive like first time events that are going on in our country, right, Seth? I mean, this is just something, it's like, hey, this is the largest ever that. This is the largest ever this. And we're having these huge swings, and it's making economic records across the board in all sorts of categories and indices and manufacturing here.
Yeah, this could be definitely taken a look at as a leading indicator on what's happening in terms of our turnaround in the economy. Some of what's not really known is or articulated by these numbers. If we, cherry picking data is one of those things that can be done all day long, and we can read articles where people are just pulling stuff out and they're like, look at this, and we try to be a bit objective around the information, right? So one of the things that isn't really known here is what is neither the measure nor apparent from these types of data, such as unusual circumstances that we're in, and how much better and in proportion of the pre-crisis activity levels that have been regained. And that's a quote actually from Josh Shapiro at MFR Inc. And so what is it in that we're taking a look at, or we don't really have yet? We will know more July 15th when Federal Reserve releases its industrial production measure for June. But it looks so cool on the front end, doesn't it?
It looks like it's going to be solid. And Seth, looking at some of these bar charts and graphs and so forth in this article and kind of digging through it, it's interesting because they're comparing China with, Germany and France and Japan, and they're going through it, and you can see where like China just had this kind of, I mean, it is a solid V. I mean, that looks like a V I learned to write in grammar school. I mean, this thing is plunging down below 50, and it is, tipping the scales at south of 40, and then rocketing north back to 50. And I'm looking at these kind of movements, but then you see like France. I mean, they go from like this 50 range down to like 30. And I mean, that's a V shape, and they're right back up over 50. The only real struggler, Japan's really struggling, Germany's kind of recovering, but they're all V-shaped. And, those are straight up demand orders. And that's kind of interesting because there's a lot to follow that. I mean, we talked a little bit a few weeks ago about semiconductors and, how we had looked at semiconductors even in our own investment portfolios as a leading indicator. We felt like China would be that. And China is, I think, the world's largest semiconductor producer. And I think that manufacturing piece is what's pushing that right there. And I think we're seeing that. It's just shocking to me with China as big as they are and how short that period was for them.
When I look at this graph, Ben, it reminds me of pulling the all-nighter in college, trying to write my report and falling asleep at the end of that sentence, and it kind of just scribbles off the page. And then I'm like, whoa, hey, wait a second. Back at it here.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. That's a good illustration, Seth. Knowing you, I think that's probably accurate. So
that was last night, actually, when I was trying to get this put together before the kids went to bed.
It's almost like someone fell off the page and dragged the pencil down and then woke up and then said, oh, goodness gracious, my pencil's supposed to be up there. I mean, it's really kind of out of control. This
Never seen anything like it.
It just literally looks
except for that.
Yeah, it looks like a bleep. Like, oops, we turned off the switch. We have no production, and now we have all this production again. And it's not like it's really shy or anything. I mean, they're right back up. Other than Japan, I mean, they're right back up to where they basically all were, which is scary as could be, but wonderful for our economy and definitely solid, positive news. But Seth, we talked about jobs, and I'm going to jump here to a Barron's article. Talks about 2.4 million jobs were added in June. ADP report says, led by small businesses. Now this, Seth, is very interesting because why I really like this article was it kind of corrects some data that's out there that a lot of people have. Like we talked about record-setting, jobs reports at 2.5 million people with new jobs in May, right? I mean, that was the big news. Well, actually, there was a revision for May to 3.1 million jobs added.
Only a 0.8 off million.
Only a 20% miss on the bogey here on jobs. I mean, why is this buried in the news? I mean, this is a big deal. This is not 2.5. This is 3.1 million jobs added. And originally reported 2.8 million jobs lost. I mean, this is crazy. I mean, the numbers are completely backwards here and not even providing. I mean, listen, if you had 2.5 million jobs or 3.1 million jobs added, that's a monumental difference. Okay, first of all, so 2.5 million jobs is like the fastest job adding ever in history, but we were actually off by over 20%. That's kind of a remarkable mistake and kind of an overlooked topic. Why is that just being dismissed? I mean, that's enormous. And then they think the increase for June, which is basically 2.4 million, which is a great runner up here. They actually, they're saying how they have all this post data that has to really settle before they can actually mark off the real job count, but it's at least 2.4.
Yeah, for Shepardson sees an increase of 4 million in June for non-farm payrolls. That's assuming no significant revisions to the May figure. I think the numbers just keep on going up.
Which is, I mean, when you think about what's going on here, we got some partial reclosures of restaurants and stores and, stay at home being, potentially executed again. And we got a lot of like woes and concerns, but jobs are being added. And that's a really solid, strong sign. I think that has a lot to do with the demand article we just went through and the fact that, there is more demand than people realize. It's not like we had some kind of economy that was, bustling, kind of in churning in itself. We have an economy that has lots of cash with lots of demand. And even though we shut off, that demand and that need is still more important than saving the cash, which is a great sign for our economy.
You know what I thought you were going to say at the beginning of this article? Why you like this article so much was because it was by Lisa Bilfus, which you were going to be able to say better than I could, given my track record with any author so
Lisa
far.
Lisa Bilfus and I are good friends, so yes.
Yeah.
No, just kidding. Never met her, but it was an easy word.
Here's what history tells me about Ben and authors and their names, is that actually the next article here is, here's what history tells us happens after the S&P 500's best quarters of all time. As strategist says, it's set to repeat. And that's by Callum Kiln. So here we go, guys. We just finished one of the best quarters ever since 1950 in the S&P.
That's crazy.
Right?
That is nuts. I mean, it was quite a quarter. I mean, we had some volatile, crazy swings. It's not like it was a straight up quarter. It was bizarre. I mean, matter of fact, when you look at the first and second quarter of this year, you probably couldn't find more opposite, I mean, it's really bizarre. I mean, you just don't see this stuff, folks. When we talk about pandemic, like unprecedented, the last two quarters have had an absolute fly. So the big question is, what do I do next? How do I invest from this point forward? Because a lot of people, they're not back to where they were. I mean, people are still underwater in a lot of cases, and we're seeing this massive rise. We're hearing there's tons of people making money. There's tons of people who've lost money, and a lot of average investors are sitting there saying to themselves, what do I do now? Well,
That is a question that maybe data can solve for us, or at least give us some guidance around. So here's what's being measured out there since 1950. Following the top 10 quarters, okay, the index of the S&P 500 has climbed every time the next quarter with an average 8% jump. On 3 occasions, 1970, 1998, 2009, the strong quarter was also preceded by a double-digit percentage fall, as it was this time around. So the index was higher 1 year later, following 9 out of the 10 quarters, with the exception of 1987 stock market crash. And that's study from SunTrust's study. Well, does that, I mean...
Did you throw all your money at the S&P, Seth? Is that what we do?
No. Tempted.
This is an interesting thing. I mean, this is unprecedented. So, I mean, we can look at history and we do look at a lot of different things. Are we going 100% to cash? No. Are we holding cash in our managed portfolios? Yes, in every one of them. At different variables. It's definitely something that we're not sure what happens. I mean, ultimately, we could have a second massive wave of coronavirus. We could have massive shutdowns. I mean, whether you're on the side of that coronavirus doesn't exist or you think it's the worst pandemic, since the, whatever flu, swine flu, or whatever, what was that?
Spanish flu.
It doesn't really matter because honestly, if the states shut down again, if we put major, hampering on the ability for business to be conducted or travel to happen, it's going to hurt the market. It's going to pull the market back. So it's not like we're dealing with an economic crisis that's predictable by an economic storm. It's not like we had all the airplanes grounded because there was a massive hurricane or an electrical storm that wiped, we're talking about a pandemic and we're talking about actions by a government. So could we have a massive downturn pullback scenario? Absolutely. And you need to be prepared for that. I mean, that's really where everyone should be ready for. Do I believe that there's some opportunity inside it, still a market like this, whether you're buying pandemic cycling stocks that might play into that piece where, some of these companies who are, web-based technology, I mean, everyone's talking about when kids use Zoom. I mean, that stock has risen out of control. Is that one of the plays, or is it that, hey, listen, the airlines are going to come back roaring and, coronavirus no longer exists, so therefore, airline stocks are going to skyrocket? It doesn't matter which side of that story you're on. Both of those hold major risk because one's dropped way down and one's gone way up. They can easily reverse or they can easily both continue going the direction they were, which is worthless airlines because no one wants to fly anymore, or Zoom could be an unfathomably much higher stock because, hey, we're stuck at home forever and the only way to communicate in life would be electronically, which would be a sad existence in my opinion. So there's a lot going on here, and I think this is where people like us come into play, and we try to help you balance the pieces and the initiatives of where investing opportunity exists and trying to hedge that as best we possibly can. If you have questions on stuff like this where there are a lot of unknowns, you can reach us at 855-226-8551. You can also email us at info@yourmoneyontap.com, and that number is 855-226-8551. We will be right back with Social Security and what the future looks like for you there.
Hi, my name is Seth Krussman, partner with Brayshaw Financial Group and one of the co-hosts of Money on Tap. One of the biggest concerns and largest expenses people face today is taxes. Without thoughtful planning, taxes can destroy future retirement dollars, eliminating the possibility of a timely retirement or dreams of what you want retirement to look like. If you're like most people, you're getting closer and closer to retirement, and you may be wondering if you're taking the right steps. Will my income be enough? Will rising taxes force me to give up my dreams? How does inflation factor into all of this? These are real concerns, and you're not alone. Putting a plan around your financial future is what we do. If you have questions when it comes to your financial security, and if you're looking for a personalized solution, contact us at Brayshaw Financial Group, 855-226-8551. It's time for you to start getting answers to your questions. Headquartered in Bedford, New Hampshire, Brayshaw Financial has offices across the country. We'd love the opportunity to show you how we can help. There's absolutely no cost or obligation to meet with us. Call us at 855-226-8551. 855-226-8551.
Now back to Money on Tap with Ben and Seth.
Welcome back. You're listening to Money on Tap. And, If you're looking to get a hold of us, you can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. That was probably the most important information that you have received thus far in the show. Ben said it before me, so that's all credit due to Ben Brayshaw, who I can actually say his name. I practiced it a few times. But we talked about a whole bunch of interesting to us stuff back there in the news, which was, job claims and manufacturing numbers in the S&P's best quarter since, fourth best quarter since 1950, and what happens the year after that historically. And I don't know, that's the stuff that I just get all giddy about because it's fun to look at. Maybe you're one of those people out there that says, who cares? And I want to know if Social Security is going to stick around. Well, this is your show. We're here to tell you. Well, we're here to tell you what we know and what we see and what the possibilities could be. Ben, you did a great job articulating kind of like so many different clients' perspective at the beginning of the show and why this is an important conversation for us. People, if you're here and you've worked for 10 quarters, you qualify for Social Security.
Oh, you mean 10 years, 40 quarters? Yeah.
That's what I meant. Thank you. I'm just trying to use my own personal life experience. I've only worked for 10 quarters, so I'm hoping that I qualify.
Nice, Seth. That's nice. A little tax evasion going on there somewhere then.
Yeah, that's how it works. And, oh, geez, that's a great way to start information. We're just going to start hemorrhaging at the beginning of this show and see where it leads us. But we did start talking about the client that comes in. And, like, first of all, do you qualify for Social Security? That's the first question we need to understand. But then there's so many different outtakes from there are, I don't believe in Social Security. Oh, okay. Well, regardless of whether or not you believe in it, it's what is happening right now. In us as planners, we need to be able to try to understand that as a piece of data for a plan to help understand what the possibilities could be for you. Whether you believe it's going to stick around or you think it's going to go away, this is the conversation that we're having around Social Security today. As we're having this conversation, and I am hopefully not misstating facts and data, as I love so often to do, there is one important thing that you need to know. The conversation happens around you, around your finances, around your journey, and it's important to have that with a qualified professional and a planner to put those pieces together so you can understand what the options are. There's all sorts of levers, all sorts of different things. We're here to have it with you today, but we're also at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. And it's even more important than just listening to the show to pick up the phone, give us a call your planner, make sure that the conversation that you're having, you start to understand how this plays a part in your plan and how significant it is for you.
Seth, what's really interesting about Social Security is the viewpoint that so many people have. There's some polls out there. One was Social Trends put out there about whether Social Security would be at its current level, whether the Social Security be reduced, or whether there'd be no benefit at all. And between 18 and 29, and this is just about a year ago this poll was taken, people between 18 and 29 years old believe that 15% of them believe Social Security would stay the same. 42% of that same age bracket, 18 to 29, thought that Social Security would be reduced. And 42% of people thought at that age, 18 to 29, thought Social Security would be non-existent. There would be no benefit at all.
42%.
Half. So half of people think. I mean, honestly, what's interesting is the age bracket. This is really interesting. The age bracket 30 to 49, that number actually goes up to 52% of Americans, 30 to 49, believe no benefits in Social Security will exist.
People have some faith.
What are you talking about? I don't think they're going to do it. I'm part of that 52%.
Just have a little faith. Be a little bit on the bright side today.
Well, I mean, the thing is that, I mean, we have such a huge problem with Social Security. We're going to get into that a little bit, but I thought it was interesting that 50 plus people, 50 and older, believe only 28% of people believe there'd be no benefit, but half of them, almost half of them, 48% said that they thought it would be reduced. I mean, there's not an overwhelming percentage, and in none of the polls did anybody believe at a higher percentage that it would stay at current levels. So pretty much whether it was going to be reduced or no benefit, both of those segments were both higher percentages than whether it was current levels. Matter of fact, 50 and over thought it would just be 23% would stay at current levels, where 28% was no benefit. That's an enormous disparity in fear. I mean, and so I think going into this election cycle and the election cycles to come, we're going to have a Social Security onslaught of information that's going to say, what are we going to do with it? And it's a hot topic, man. It's a hot topic. And I'm excited to kind of get into this, because this is something that needs to be the forefront of people's mindset. And it's going to be the forefront of a voting mindset. And honestly, it's going to be something that's going to be addressed in a way that every one of these parties is going to want to look good, and they're not going to want to look like they're bad and they overdid something. And that's scary, because we do have a hot potato here. We have a Social Security event that's basically going to happen to us in 2035 or 2034, depending on which statistic you read. Social Security is going to run out of money to meet all of its benefits. And there's still going to be money coming in for Social Security, but it's speculated that somewhere between 60 and 80% of the funds coming in will be able to be supported. So you're somewhere around 60, 80%, in 2035, if something's not changed or adjusted. There's going to be a reduced benefit automatically on some level, or the government's going to have to start forking this out. And that number of what that debt is, which is basically unfunded liabilities to come, baby, are like, one article I read was $43 trillion. I've heard it's upwards to $100 trillion. I don't know, but first of all, that's not even that's larger than our national debt. And it was larger than 2 times our national debt like a year ago. But now, after all the recent stimulus in our country, we're going to be approaching $43 trillion here shortly.
So one of the things that I've actually never even taken a look at until today, okay, but I want to share this with you in the perspective of the direction of Social Security, yay or nay, and the numbers that are being pulled and Ben was just pulling up. Okay, these are not a complete list, but just a few of the countries out there with Social Security programs. And I'm not even sure what the level of them are. I'm just saying they have Social Security, okay? And this is off of Wikipedia, so go find it here. Spain, Greece, the Philippines, Turkey, Canada, and Mexico.
Why are you laughing at Canada?
Oh, because I love Canadians. They just make me laugh. So out of those, these are Brazil, okay, Australia, Finland, France, Germany, but again, Greece.
There's like 162 countries or something in our country. Are you going to list them all off, or what? Is it going to take all day? Let's go.
I'm just saying. You think we're going to have no Social Security before they do? And look at in comparison where they're at.
Most of them are going to go bankrupt. Okay, let's break down the facts. Okay, we've talked about this 1,000 times. Okay,
all right.
There's 320 some odd million Americans in this country. 40-ish billion. There's 320 million people in this country. There's 40 million people retired. Sorry for all the billions, millions, and trillions. Okay, we have in the next 20 years another 80 million Americans going to retire. That's 120 out of our 320 million Americans. We have a massive aged population that has us basically, we're just weighted down by this massive obligation. We're just talking Social Security, Seth. We're not even talking about the PBGC, the Pension Benefit Guarantee Corp, which is all the pensions that are supposed to be guaranteed because these companies out there are supposed to have enough funds sitting around to help pay for them. But meanwhile, you're going to say something. What are you going to say?
Just the fun sitting around. I was like, pensions have fun sitting around. Sorry, folks, they don't. They just don't have fun sitting around.
They don't. They're all in disarray. And the PBGC, it does not have enough money to cover that. And we're talking a light switch level of demand on these assets. It's not like they have money to sit there. They're just going to be draining the money out of there. And I mean, we got some serious problems when it comes to retirement guarantees in this country. And, Social Security is a massive one. I mean, if you're collecting Social Security, we did a show years ago, I think it was, where if you did Social Security, I think you were in the top 3% of the global economic wealth, like just collecting Social Security alone. Right? Isn't that right? We're top 5.
Rich.
Yeah, I mean, you're rich just getting your Social Security check. And no one considers themselves rich when they're just collecting Social Security, and that's it. So we got a problem, and that problem's big.
I am going to 100% agree with you, Ben Brayshaw.
Now that's recorded. I like that. That's
yeah. You can take that and you can slap that on your epitaph. Not that that's going to happen any day ever.
Well, okay. So Seth, let's break down these problems here. So,
all right.
Number one, the number one problem is that the Social Security maximum retirement age since 1937 to 1960, the maximum retirement age only grows 2 years. It goes from 65 years old to 67, and it stops there. Okay, and then you have the life expectancy age rising dramatically. I mean, people are living longer. Matter of fact, this one article that we started reading on, one of the many articles we read here, by Lori Konish, very easy name, Seth, if you hadn't noticed. The Social Security retirement age could go up. Here's why that change won't be. She notes that the average life expectancy age was 17 years increase. Okay, doesn't matter race, creed, background, doesn't matter anything. It's an average of 17 years for everybody. Okay.
You basically just got a quarter of your life handed back to you, and you get to stay retired for that period of time.
Yeah, I mean, there's kind of some obvious stuff here that's broken. I mean, there just needs to be some scaling. I mean, if the average life expectancy is going up, they need to scale Social Security to be within the same type of guidelines on some level, with maybe some exceptions that, address health and concerns like that. But, I mean, if people are just living massively longer and we're not accounting for that, because Social Security was meant to be kind of an end stage, like you couldn't work anymore, part of your life, here's your Social Security check. And it has totally become like a major retirement plan. Like, I'm going to go travel the world, and my Social Security money is going to help cover some of that. That's a big difference.
Can't say I don't like that. Travel the world, Social Security, got me covered. But hey, I mean, we can pull it in however we want. We can articulate that. Those numbers can mean whatever they mean to you. They could also mean that's my medication and that's my, that's how I'm paying for, later life. But here's the thing, folks. 17 years increase in life in expectancy without even with one increase in the full retirement age. Full retirement age equals what? Full retirement age equals you get the full payout of your Social Security benefits, and that is ongoing for the rest of your life. Age 67 today, right? And that was back in 1983 that change was pulled in. So since then, we really haven't had anything addressed here in terms of, well, there's been cost of living increases that have happened in Social Security over time. That's been nice. Those have been addressed.
People complain about those because they're not that much.
Not as much as you'd like.
But I mean, honestly, are they going to continue to increase stuff constantly when they know that they're not even balancing the equation to life expectancy creeping?
Life expectancy creeping. That's a good one. You can put that on my epitaph. Okay, we're gonna have to get this show back on track, folks. We're gonna take a quick break. You're listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. We're gonna figure it out, and we're gonna tell you all about it right when we come back.
Hi, my name is Ben Brayshaw, one of the co-hosts of Money on Tap. If you have questions when it comes to your retirement and are looking for a personalized solution, contact us at Brayshaw Financial Group. In today's volatile stock market, we can help you plan to find your successful retirement solution. Am I saving enough? Am I saving into the right places? Do my investments match my appetite for risk? Do I have a tax strategy that is going to help me keep more of what I earn? How can I maximize my Social Security income? If you are like most people, you are getting closer and closer to your retirement and may be wondering if you're taking the right steps. If you're in retirement, you may be wondering, am I maximizing my income while preserving my estate and caring for my family? We talk about all things financial in what we call three-dimensional investing, putting a plan around your financial future. If you feel that now is the time to start getting the answers to some of these questions for your own situation, give us a call at Brayshaw Financial Group at 855-226-8551. Headquartered in Bedford, New Hampshire, we have offices throughout New England and across the country. We would love the opportunity to show you how we can help. There's absolutely no cost or obligation just to meet with us, and we welcome you to our office. Call us at 855-226-8551.
Now back to Money on Tap with Ben and Seth.
Welcome back. You're listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. So we are talking about Social Security, folks, and we're going to land the ship here with what are some of the solutions out there being discussed? And do we have any say in any of these things? No, not at the moment, but hey, we're going to talk about them at least. And B, you in your planning. I think that's the important part that we need to have a discussion around. And where do you get how do you frame the conversation inside of your plan?
Yeah, Seth, that's a really great point. And I think one of the things is if you can't discuss like what potentially could happen with Social Security, if you're not addressing that today, just being prepared for that and planning for it, just having some foreshadowing on what the conversation is out there moving forward and what the world looks like 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now regarding Social Security, may address how you structure your business. It might address how, the types of employee structures you put together. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts here that if you kind of have the idea of what the experts and what the people are kind of, gossiping around this topic, this could be something where you could plan and be ready for. It's kind of an important direction to look at and to feel out and say, hey, what are they thinking that we should do? As we kind of dug through this, there's a lot to it. I mean, there's a lot of people with a lot of different things. I mean, the first thing that, easily comes into play is that they just may raise taxes. The government may just say, we can't afford to cover Social Security. So raising taxes for everybody, income taxes specifically, would be one way to address it. Because if you're collecting Social Security in your retirement, then they could probably create some sort of formula for someone who makes a certain amount of money to absorb back that money in taxes. And that would create some sort of tiered, everyone gets your money, but then you get overtaxed. I thought that was an interesting piece, an item that kind of came about in one of the articles I read. Another thing that they just said was that we would just raise the Social Security tax in the wages, which would only hurt the working class, which would be horrible. I don't know what you think about that.
Once again, folks, working class, middle class, gonna pay for it.
That's some hard news. I mean, and honestly, I don't think that there's really any way to avoid A or B on that scenario. I think there's going to be a big mixture of a lot of this stuff.
Well, where are you going to get the money, right? That's question one. We got a deficit. How are we going to get the money back to par, right? Taxes is the first place that people usually go. And last but not least, but it never really seems to work out, is balancing our budget. Because nobody wants to do that. I don't care what side of the line you're on. Nobody is grabbing that bull and saying, we're going to balance this thing and make it work.
Yeah, I mean, people don't look at the federal budget as, like their house. I mean, there's only two ways that you can deal with your finances in your home, and that's either to spend less or make more. I mean, it's really that simple, right? I mean, we either choose to cut the cable or, not get the extra stuff, and, we reduce our grocery shopping. We eat a little bit more pasta. Whatever it is that you do to, cut your budget, that's one way of saving money when you can't make more. Or you go to your employer and say, hey, I need a raise. I can't afford, what that looks like in my budget right now. The cost of living is just exceedingly, cramping us, and we've cut everything we can. Our government is the same way. Their income is from our taxes. I mean, so for them to make more money, they've got to ask more from us, and that means that they have to tax us. Or they need to cut social programs that they spend money on because their expenses are the things that we benefit from. I mean, it's things like museums. It's things like, I hate to say monuments right now, but that's what's coming to mind. And, maybe we're going to have a little bit more taxes with the more monuments we're going to have to rebuild. I have no idea, but they have to spend less. And now the other joke is that we just refuse to pay China, which, is something that has been sarcastically commented by Trump, that he's just not going to pay some of these bonds back that we have with China, which is kind of funny because I had said that many years ago that we just don't pay. And, but we've got to reduce our expenses, or we got to take more income in to cover future debts, because that Social Security is that's like that car payment you're going to have in 5 years. That's where we're at, and it's a big car payment.
So there's several proposals out there, right? There's the raise taxes. How could they do that? Payroll taxes could go from 12.4% to 14.8% by 2043 is one of these proposals out there from Munel. And then raising that Social Security taxes that currently goes up to $132,900 to $400,000, right? That are taxed. Did we already talk about this?
We didn't, but we probably want to explain that because basically, if you make up to $132,900 as of last year, or I think it's $136,800 in 2020. That's how much you pay your Social Security tax. Anything above that is you don't pay Social Security tax on. And they're thinking about raising that to $400 so that you would pay Social Security tax all the way up to $400 instead of kind of stopping at that $130,000 level. Now, I'm not completely in disagreement with that, but I'll tell you from an investment business owner tax planning strategy issue, that's going to change a lot, because there's a lot of husbands and wives who, have a small business who have a couple $100,000 coming through, and the wife doesn't take a salary at all, or takes just enough to get her 40 quarters in that we talked about earlier. But they run as much salary as they can through the husband so that they cliff out and they don't have to pay any more on Social Security tax than they have to. And that's a pretty ABC planning strategy. So, and if you're a self-employed person and you're not aware of this, give us a call. We'd be happy to explain it to you. And that number is 855-226-8551. And you can get that at our break as well. But this is something that, is a kind of a typical planning strategy. And we've done a number of different things for people to kind of minimize the amount of taxes they're paying in this space. And I think this recommendation is clearly a way to, address that problem. To kind of kill that tax loophole is how I look at it, Seth.
One of the things that the plan also includes with that is raising the Social Security age too. So that benefit would still be in place, 62, but a reduced benefit.
That's a novel idea.
It's there. It's still there. But one of the things to take a look at that, and this is where you do the work in your plan, it's pretty simple to kind of postpone that payment or that piece of your Social Security retirement. You can articulate that number lower. You can set it for a later date. how do those numbers work with each other? Are you okay to do what's gap coverage in some funding in your retirement? And how do you do that? What are the places that those pieces can come from? So there's the front end of the strategy building into that. But then there's also the testing of that. So we take a look at those things with you. So this another idea here. Now this comes from Lawrence Kotlakoff, an economist professor at Boston University, that sees Social Security as a patchwork of rules that has been cobbled together since the program was established in 1935. And the best way to fix it, he says, is to start over with a clean slate. Well,
that's scary. I mean, I just got to tell you, I don't disagree. I mean, I don't disagree that ripping apart Social Security is not a bad idea, but this is something that there's just going to be an up in arms. It's going to be, I don't know, maybe too. It could be that this is actually well received by the general public, saying, hey, we all know Social Security is broken. We're coming up with a whole new plan. This is what it's going to be. But I'll tell you, anyone collecting Social Security is not going to want to see their benefits go down.
No, you're right. And in all fairness, it is a plan that they can say would be frozen in place. If you're 50 years or older, like basically you're stuck with the current plan. It's kind of that figuring out for that next population that would come through in how they would do that. But again, there's one scenario there as well.
I don't know that I disagree with that, but I like I said, it's a problematic scenario because you can't make anyone happy here. I think the things that people kind of generally accept is one is the maximum Social Security age and the rise and waiting till 70 from your full retirement age to collect, that 8% increase in your benefit and everything. And I think people generally realize that they can collect early, and that's uniquely early. And I think everyone's kind of accepted the fact that that number needs to move. And I'm not saying that I have any statistics out there, but I think generally people think that 62 could easily slide to 64 or 65 overnight as the early retirement age, and that we're looking at 65, 70, and 75 for max. I mean, I think this thing can slide 5 years, and probably we wouldn't have a huge upheaval just automatically as long as the benefits stayed the same. I think if the benefits stayed the same, people would just acknowledge that as like, I can be a subcontractor, I can be a consultant, I can do something for 4 or 5 years to kind of make up that difference. Like I could work part-time as a plumber till I'm from 60 to 65, if that's what I'm doing, and I could probably make up the little bit of difference if I had retired at 62. I think our society, we have a longer life expectancy because we are healthier, stronger, better, and more able at 62 than we were, 30 plus years ago, 40 years ago.
Third but not last, out of a think tank of the Heritage Foundation comes a plan for a, oh goodness gracious, this is a flat, kind of like a flat tax Social Security, a universal benefit, I guess would be a better way to put that, moving towards a more universal benefit, which would level how much individuals receive from the system. It would increase payments for people who are receiving checks today and below the federal poverty level, according to Rachel Gressler, research fellow at the Heritage Foundation. And at the same time, it would also trim benefits for middle and higher income workers. Now, the quote here is, if you slowly move towards that flat universal benefit over time, you can reduce the size of the program and make it more targeted. So, well, this is, again, a total revamp,
I
right?
love the quote out of this article. Ultimately, the onus would be on the workers to put that money to good use and invest it wisely.
Oh, yeah, that too. Yeah, there were some interesting drop-ins there where, where they're basically the federal government is getting involved in the market and using market returns as a part of subsidizing and paying for the increases in benefits. Saw some of that in some of the plans.
Yeah, no, that's all been part of that. I think, it's interesting watching the Fed get involved in the corporate bond market. And we've talked about how that's a, very unique, very special first-time event. And they're still talking about it and what they're doing. And they went from buying ETFs to buying bonds directly. And, there's just a lot of stuff going on out there. And, I'm not necessarily against the market being, being something that we invest. I mean, these funds, if we just stuck them if we just bought our own treasuries with those assets, we'd be better off. I mean, why aren't we at least doing that? And, some of the simple stuff why aren't we buying our own bonds? I mean, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to just stick that money, but it is what it is. And there's very little we can do on that. But I think the big piece here as we wrap up is that, there's a lot of moving parts here. But our advice is to constantly have a forward-looking viewpoint to foreshadow what could be potentially happening so you can position yourself today for what tomorrow might bring. And if you think taxes are going to be higher tomorrow, or that's 20 years from now tomorrow, then, prepping for that today is really where your mindset should be. And that's always been our encouragement here at Money on Tap and Brayshaw Financial.
Thanks for joining us today. You've been listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. Also, we're in a podcast. You can find us at any of the podcast venues out there. We appreciate the likes and the listens. We're also at Facebook at /3D Investing and Twitter at BFG_LLC. We appreciate you joining us here today, and we hope you make it a great day and a great life. Thanks for joining us with Money on Tap.
There are a lot of pieces to helping our aging parents in the final chapters of their lives. On this Cliff Notes edition of Money on Tap, Seth and Ben look at the importance of addressing our parents' finances, something that needs to be handled with a certain amount of urgency.
Financial conversation can be one of those bridges that just takes more time than maybe some of the others to really cross. So, whether there's medical needs or immediate right now or in the future, really just being aware of the finances here is what we're trying to talk about, is trying to just, think about what it is that your parents are doing and how they are engaging in their finances. Is it a checkbook? Are they online? Are they using, credit cards? How many do they have? How they operate around their finances is even just a conversation possibly that can introduce this and help that conversation move forward.
Absolutely. And I think, the interesting story too, I had in that scenario, just an example, there was a health change, an event. People said, hey, we want to come in. We want you to meet with our son or daughter. And everything was, it was a little bit of heart concern there. Some kind of stuff had popped up and everyone was aware. Now things have kind of settled down and things are a little better, not perfect, but better. And they're like, we're going to try to do this stuff over the next 6 to 9 months. So what happened to, we want to meet with you next week, now turn into 9 months. And I'm talking to them. I'm like, listen, this is not an overnight decision. These are not overnight issues to address. They take months to address. So 9 months from now, if we sit down, it's not going to be like flicking a light switch from, off to on. There's a process and there's a lot of work behind that. And I said, you still want to move with urgency. And some of the stuff they want to do, they want to put into a trust, and it's complicated, and they want to, they want to protect some assets, and they need a clock to start. And I said, listen, if you're going to do that trust, you have a 5-year clock. This is what they needed to do. And I said, if you wait 9 months, now you have a 5-year, 9-month clock, but you still haven't even had any time to get with the attorney and write the trust and make sure that's correct. So now you got a 6-year clock. You need to get that clock moving as soon as possible. And trying to explain urgency around making these decisions is really important, because financials are usually the number one thing I find that people do not want to let go of. They do not want to hand that over to the kids. They don't want their kids telling them what they can spend or buy or do. They think that's all about what this is, and it's not.
Yeah, making sure that you're documenting what's going on there. I've seen a lot of people kind of create a worksheet or, just kind of like an inventory, really, of all the different things that are going on: Medicare, long-term care policies, all these different policies, life policies that can be out there.
Have a list for who your accountant, your attorney, your CPA,
right. All in one place, easy.
Advisor. What we do is we provide a listing. We provide online access. We provide, documentation for a complete list of assets depending on the person's scenario. But we've done that for attorneys, for accountants, for people's kids. We encourage people to bring their kids into our office. We want them for 2 reasons. One, we want them to know what their parents own, why they own it, okay, and what the purpose of it is. Because after a plan's been put in place, having kids come in to evaluate a plan and figure out whether they think it's good, bad, or indifferent makes things much more messy than trying to understand why they went into this initially. And I really always encourage that. And I know Seth does too. So
Thanks for joining us for this Cliff Notes edition of Money on Tap, with great tips from the pros in three-dimensional investing, utilizing insurance, brokerage, and fee-based planning. The views expressed are not necessarily the opinion of this radio station and should not be construed directly or indirectly as an offer to buy or sell any securities mentioned herein. Investing is subject to risks, including loss of principal invested. No strategy, product, material, or tool mentioned can assure a profit nor protect against loss. Please note that individual situations can vary. Therefore, the information, products, materials, or tools mentioned should be relied upon when coordinated with individual professional advice. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. This show may be subsidized in whole or in part by a product sponsor or issuer. Securities and advisory services offered through SagePoint Financial Incorporated, member FINRA SIPC, and a registered investment advisor. All other services offered through Brayshaw Financial Group LLC are independent of SagePoint Financial. SagePoint Financial and Brayshaw Financial Group do not provide tax or legal advice. Main office is located at 116 South River Road, Bedford, New Hampshire, 03110, and can be reached at toll-free 855-226-8551.
Well, bye.